Chapter 3, Social Cognition, how we think about the social world. You heard that crunching in the background, that's my dog eating their dog bones. Okay, anyway, they're from your reservation. I picked them up when I was there. Anyway, okay, so Chapter 3, how we think about the social world. There are two kinds of social cognitions. One is controlled thinking, and the other is automatic thinking. Automatic thinking is quick. There's no conscious deliberation of thoughts or perceptions or assumptions. Controlled thinking, on the other hand, is effortful and deliberate, thinking about about yourself and the environment, and carefully selecting the right course of action. This is how we like to think, controlled. But all too often we suffer from automatic thinking. And of course, we're going to talk about how that can get us in trouble from time to time. People will often react correctly despite not consciously choosing to react in that manner. These are our mental templates used to make decisions called schemas. Also, there's emotional reactions, going with your gut feelings. Some people have expertise. I have degrees in 4 different areas: English, medical laboratory technology, political science, and psychology. So these are unconscious understandings of, and to some extent, it guides my thinking and it guides my answers. Hopefully, it does anyway. And implicit knowledge and understanding that we are not aware of consciously. Other automatic thinking that we have is blind sight, perception that is not recorded consciously, prosopagnosia, people who suffer brain damage and can't recognize faces. They will still have increased heart rates when they are confronted with a familiar face, and that's known as prosopagnosia. Intuition, recognizing someone you know in a younger face of the individual. And then there's subliminal automatic thinking, reacting to a stimulus that is below our threshold of recognition. There have been a lot of questions as to whether subliminal thought occurs or subliminal hearing. And what we have determined is that if it's a relatively simple message, then the subliminal message can get through. If you do, does anybody recognize this guy's face? That's him as a youngster. This is him as the President of the United States, John F. Kennedy. How about these two? One of them was president. Obviously, we haven't had any female presidents, but I guess it must be the guy with the beard. That's Bill and Hillary Clinton, of course. How about this guy? Old unibrow there. Yale baseball team. His father actually played baseball for Yale. That's George W. Bush, of course. And how about this guy? Does anybody recognize this guy? Well, maybe not. First of all, you'd have to be Catholic to recognize him. Well, you don't have to be Catholic. You can just have seen his picture. That's Pope Francis. There he is. Okay. And how about this guy? He is not the Pope. And he is not a president. But he is the captain. That's Johnny Depp. Of course, Johnny Depp and Amber Heard are in the middle of a legal battle right now. Interesting stuff. Okay, schemas are organized structures of knowledge. It's usually, we build our schemas from experience. Our schemas usually contain causal relations. They're formed from a theory about how the social world operates. People with expertise on the topic have well-developed schema about that topic. That's one of the things we're trying to teach you in psychology is we're trying to get you to develop schemas about psychological problems potentially and how to listen to your clients. People create scripts that represent schemas about events. Gender schemas are cognitive structures for processing information according to maleness and femaleness. Use of gender schema reinforces social stereotypes about gender. Not everyone is gender schematic, of course, and this has become a real serious problem as some individuals are discarding their old pronouns, he and she, uh, and for other pronouns, and it's getting really kind of interesting out there. You just about have to you have to talk to people before you really understand who they want to be referred to as. But of course, gender schemas are pretty strong, especially in the older generation. It may be that millennials, individuals who are born in the 21st century or just before the 21st century. These individuals are a little bit more sensitive to this, but the older you are, the grandparents that you are, the great grandparents, and maybe even the parents have a very difficult time with this concept of not having a gender schematic. Schemas can be applied rapidly and automatically when we encounter other people. Of course, this can lead to stereotypes, and stereotypes are not always good. Schemas can help us deal with new situations by giving us a basis for interpreting a new situation. And of course, one of the reasons why Black Lives Matter is called Black Lives Matter is because the schema for some policemen, especially some white policemen, is that black males are criminals, and because of that, they are more ready to pull their weapon and to shoot somebody who is an African American male, or at least it seems that way, and it certainly was. The George Floyd incident from last summer, was it last summer? Summer before last. Yeah, I guess it was the summer before last. Certainly didn't make a lot of sense. They had 9 minutes to stop strangling him, and they didn't do it and they killed him. Anyway, and that may have been because of a stereotype, a law enforcement stereotype. And of course, these pictures, I'm punk, so I must be a rebel. I'm Asian, so I must like math. I dye my hair crazy colors, so I must be looking for attention. I'm a person, so I must be stereotyped. And actually, I think those two are the same people. Oh well, they look like the same. Well, maybe not. Maybe I'm stereotyping. Schemas are a good way to organize your thoughts and give structure to our memories by filling in the blanks when trying to remember. Schemas can aid us in paying attention by adding organization to our thoughts. If we had to create all thoughts from scratch, of course, it would take us forever to think of something and to understand something. But by creating schemas, we could put things into context. It helps us organize our way of thinking. Once a schema is activated, we see more information consistent with the schema. We process the information more quickly. We remember it better. A note, schemas can be activated outside conscious awareness. This is known as accessibility. And of course, it helps us think. So highly intelligent people use schemas. Everybody uses schemas, including highly intelligent people. So are schemas bad or are schemas good? It all depends on what your schema is and whether it stereotypes people. Recent experiences will increase our accessibility to schemas that deal with these experiences. This is known as priming. Something can become primed for 3 reasons. If it's chronically accessible due to past experience, if it's accessible because it is related to a current goal, and if it's temporarily accessible because of our recent experience. And of course, this has been a problem with law enforcement they see statistics, and their schema is that African American males are more prone to criminality, which isn't really true. But they see that, and they are told that, and African American males are seen as negative in select police departments. And then when they come across an African American male, the schema kicks in, and automatic thinking kicks in, and potentially they use more force than they really should. There was a case in Wisconsin where the individual was stopped. He was black, and his wife was white, and his child was in the back seat. And he started to pull out his billfold, and the guy shot him because he thought he was going for a weapon. Now, why he would think he was going for a weapon, it's really a bit confusing, but the answer is that he was using his schema, rather the automatic thinking, rather than observing what was going on. Why would this individual be putting his wife and his child in danger by starting a gunfight with the officer? But the officer, of course, was using automatic thinking. A self-fulfilling prophecy is the case whereby people have an expectation about what another person is like, which influences how they act toward that person, which causes that person to behave consistently with the people's original expectations, making the expectations come true. Teachers will do this with their students, maintaining the stereotypes that minorities will struggle to the point of failure, and girls must be good, and boys will misbehave. We have been looking at this for decades, the fact that teachers stereotype, and they can't help it. Whether they are male teachers or female teachers, they tend to give females a free pass as compared to males who are looked on with jaundiced eyes because they misbehave. They are the ones that are theoretically the ones that are supposed to misbehave, so they are seen as the ones that are bad. In 1968, Rosenthal and Jacobson assigned special status to random students and told their teachers about the spatial status. At the end of the year, the spatial students had excelled because it created a warmer emotional climate for those students, giving them more personal attention, encouragement, and support. It gave them more challenging material. It gave them more and better feedback. It gave them more opportunities to respond in class and gave them longer to respond. Now, we've been doing this in academia forever. We have been categorizing our students as good students and bad students. The good students sit in front and the bad students sit in the back. The girls sit in the front and the boys sit in the back. Girls don't misbehave and boys do misbehave. So we've been doing this for a really long time. The other thing that we did, and this is what happened at my school back in the 50s when I started elementary school. I started elementary school in 1955. Is that right? Yep, 1955. In 1955, when I started in grade school, we were categorizing people by their IQs. Now, the odd thing was that all the smart kids went into one class, and all the kids who didn't have a high IQ went into the other class. And it was fairly obvious who was going into one class and who was going into the other class, because when we did our reading, the people in the smart kids class, they got more complex reading material. The kids that were actually in my situation, in my elementary school, the kids that were in the smart kids class, they got the Bluebird books, and some of them got Redbird books, but most of them got Bluebird books. And in the other class, the smarter kids in the class got Redbird books, and the other kids who were struggling with reading got Yellowbird books. And it was fairly obvious what was going on. Not that it made any difference at recess. Everybody played with each other, and it really didn't make that much difference as far as socially was concerned. But it was fairly obvious what was going on. Um, uh, and they had been doing this for an extended length of time. And the reason was that in the 1950s, this was right after World War II and right after the Korean War, the nuclear the United States' nuclear arsenal was being built, and we were going up against the Russians because the Russians had nuclear weapons as well, and we were afraid that the Russians were going to get into outer space. And they did. They got into outer space before we did. So we were behind the science curve, and we needed scientists, and we needed mathematicians, and we needed all of these people to step up and help us with the Cold War against the communist world. And that's one of the reasons why they pulled all these stunts with students, was to um, was to try to build a intelligentsia in the United States so that we could defeat the communist world. Anyway, so, and we've known this has been going on for an extended length of time. Rosenthal and Jacobson did this experiment, and they randomly selected these kids, but the ones that they treated better, of course, did better in school, and the ones that were treated like second-class students, they did worse. They didn't do nearly as well. So the more attention they gave them, the more likely that they were to succeed. Now, this was really kind of interesting in that males and females were treated as the same. In other words, they didn't separate the males and they didn't separate the females. The class that they gave special attention to were split between the males and the females. Heuristics are rule of thumb strategies that enables an individual to make quick, efficient judgments about a situation. We use heuristics to promote our own survival. Humans as a species have developed heuristics to ensure that survival takes place. Being right isn't nearly as important as being alive, so we develop heuristics to keep us alive. Climb up the tree and sit on the rotten branch, and you may be falling all the way to your death at the bottom of the tree. So, these are heuristics. Don't sit on the dead limb is a heuristic. One of the most common heuristics that we use is detecting typicalness when making a decision. This is known as representativeness heuristics. Representative heuristics are often applied even against overwhelming odds because we trust our instincts so frequently. And of course, these are typical tan lines. And if we see somebody that looks like this, we know that he's probably a water skier. If we see somebody with tan lines like this, we think, she's probably a mountain biker. Scuba diver, of course. The only part that is exposed are their legs just above their knees and their arms. They look like farmers. This is a rollerblader. You can see she's got the ankle socks up to just above her ankles. And what else does she have? Oh, she's got the pads on her arms, and she has the knee pads. This is a computer programmer. He's pale as death because he never gets outside. And this is a tennis player. Looks like another farmer, doesn't she? Anyway, representative heuristics. 70 engineers and 30 lawyers were interviewed, and here is a random sample from their interviews. He is a twice-divorced man who spends most of his free time at a country club. He regrets following in his father's footsteps. He wishes he hadn't spent so much time in college on academics and instead spent more time in socializing so he wouldn't be so quick to argue with people. Is he an engineer or is he a lawyer? From this description, Would you say he's a lawyer or he's an engineer? 80% said that he was a lawyer. He wished that he hadn't followed his father into the same field. Linda is a 31-year-old single, outspoken, and very bright. She majored in philosophy. This is lovely Linda. As a student, she was deeply concerned with issues of discrimination and social justice, and also participated in anti-nuclear demonstrations. Is Linda a bank teller or a college professor? She's 31 years old. She majored in philosophy. She has a social conscience. She's been in anti-nuclear demonstrations. Is she a bank teller or a college professor? And actually, I made this one up myself. If you said that she was a college professor, I think most people would think she was a college professor. Thomasina is very shy and withdrawn, invariably helpful, but with little interest in people or in the world of reality. A meek and tidy soul, she has a need for order and structure and a passion for detail. Is Thomasina a librarian or is she a doctor? An MD. If you said she's a librarian, she does sound like a librarian since she has little interest in people. Hopefully doctors have interest in people. The Barnum effect. An example of a representative heuristic is the Barnum effect. The Barnum effect is a phenomenon that when a general, nebulous description is given to an individual of themselves, they believe it strongly despite the fact that it could be true of anyone. The way people accept findings of a personality test is an example of the Barnum effect. Also, what psychics say about you is also the Barnum effect. Usually it's just something general, could refer to anybody, and usually it's something relatively positive. People like to think positive things about themselves. And this is known as the Barnum effect. While people tend to show to be slow to deduce particular instances from a general truth, they're remarkably quick to infer general truth from a vivid instance. This is known as the availability heuristic. In the South, far more rapes are committed by white males than black males. But because the rape of white women by black males is so widely publicized, white women are more likely to fear a stranger who is black than one that is white, even though you are more likely to be sexually assaulted by somebody that you know. This is a point of fact. It's like 80% of all rapes are by somebody that you are acquainted with. This is a political advertisement from the 1980s, the late 1980s, George H.W. Bush versus Mike Dukakis. If it comes up, there it is. All right.
Bush and Dukakis on crime. Bush supports the death penalty for first-degree murderers. Dukakis not only opposes the death penalty, he allowed first-degree murderers to have weekend passes from prison. One was Willie Horton, who murdered a boy in a robbery, stabbing him 19 times. Despite a life sentence, Horton received 10 weekend passes from prison. Horton fled, kidnapped a young couple, stabbing the man and repeatedly raping his girlfriend. Weekend prison passes. Dukakis on crime.
Okay, wow. Okay, I hope Willie Horton didn't scare you, but he was a black male, and he certainly was a lot larger than all those prison guards that were trying to control him. Fairly obvious what was going on. He's trying to create an availability heuristic that Mike Dukakis would allow black males to rape white women. And this was in 1988, so this is what, 40 years ago? Well, not quite 40 years ago, 35, 34 years ago. The times were a little bit different. People were more likely to stereotype, and it worked. George H.W. Bush was elected president in 1988. Unfortunately, as humans, we tend to base our heuristics on what is in our memory rather than take time to analyze a situation. We assume that if something comes readily to mind, then it is commonplace, but that's not always true. Because pictures of plane crashes are more likely to make the paper, people see airplane travel as more dangerous than automobile travel. However, statistics show that you are 26 times more likely to die in a car than in an airplane. Cultures will often influence the way a person thinks. People in Western cultures tend to have an analytics thinking style, focusing on objects without considering surrounding context. People in Eastern cultures use a holistic thinking style, focusing on the overall context relation between the objects. This is holistic thinking. Whoops, I don't have a, wait a minute, I don't have an arrow. Let me go back. And yeah, there we go. Okay, this is holistic thinking and this is analytical thinking. Controlled thinking is thinking that is conscious, intentional, voluntary, and effortful. There is a question as to how much of our behavior comes under the control of controlled thinking and how much is dictated by automatic thinking. Controlled thinking gives us the feeling of free will. The more people believe in free will, the more likely they will help others. The less people believe in free will, the more likely they will participate in immoral actions such as cheating. They feel that society controls them and they are only cheating society, not themselves. Counterfactual thinking refers to the mentally simulating events to imagine alternative scenarios. The closer an outcome, the more likely an individual will participate in counterfactual thinking. Research shows that the closer an individual comes to winning, the more regret they feel. This person is holding up a second place trophy, and as you can see, she's quite upset because she didn't get the first place trophy. The more significant the event, the more likely the individual will participate in counterfactual thinking. Playing over and over again in our minds the accidental death of someone close to us is very common. However, we tend to live with less regret over an incident that we did than things that we didn't do. Trying and failing seems less regrettable than never trying at all. From Alfred Lord Tennyson's poem In Memoriam 27, written in 1850, I hold it true whate'er befall, I feel it when I sorrow most, 'tis better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. And of course, what he's saying is it's better to try to create a relationship, at least you tried, and than to never have tried, because that makes you think about it over and over and over again. If I'd done this, if I'd married this person, that kind of thing. And of course, the counterfactual thinking, this is something that I tell my children, I tell my students that ask me, I tell them don't think about what you could have done, just think about what you have done. I have a former student that just finished his PhD and he's looking for a job. And I told him what will probably happen is you'll be offered two jobs at the same time and they will both look equally good. And you'll take one and wish that you'd taken the other. But what you need to do is make sure that whichever one you take, you concentrate on that job. Don't ever think about the other job. Same thing happened to me when I took the job with Dene College. I was offered a job at let me think of Valley City State College up in North Dakota. I was offered a job with them at the same time, and it was for more money. And And potentially it was for more prestige, but I chose Dene College, and I really haven't looked back and thought, oh, golly, I wish I'd taken that job at Valley City. I never really have, and but I was just offered the two jobs at the same time. And I tell my kids that too. You know, if you have an option of two different jobs, don't ever look back and say, "Geez, I wish I'd taken the other job." I mean, that kind of stuff can just eat you up for the rest of your life. So that's what I told my student. He's a worrier, so I'm guessing that whatever I tell him, he's not going to do anyway. Yeah, he'll probably think whatever he wants to think. Okay. Anyway, and he's on his way to that job. He's on his way to the East Coast. He has a job teaching psychology at Salem State University, and we'll see if that works out for him. He's kind of one of those sad sack people that oh well, Eeyore type people that that nothing quite works out quite the way he wants it to. And of course, if that's what you're looking for in life, perfection, then you'll never find it. You'll never. Counterfactual thinking. While winners are always happy, research has shown that the unhappiest person in a three-tiered winner's podium is the second place finisher. The second place finisher thinks about how he didn't come in first. The third place finisher is happy because he didn't come in fourth and not win a medal. And of course, this is number one. This is a gold medal. Here's the silver medal. As you can see, not the happiest person in the world. And here's the guy that got third place. He's just happy he's on the podium, of course. And same thing, we see the same thing. First place, and there's second place smiling and clapping. And there's third place frowning and not clapping. And here we go again. First place, of course, real happy. Second place is frowning and has her flowers really low. And there's the third place. She's smiling. And anyway, there you go. If I'm not, if I'm remember this correctly, both of these ladies are from China. I can't remember where she's from. I think Russia. And here we go. This is some kind of bobsled thing. First place is raising their flowers, and they got those goofy looking donuts. And third place is raising their flowers, goofy looking donuts. And Canada in fourth and second place, not raising their flowers. Not They are smiling though. That's kind of nice, but they're not raising their flowers like everybody else. One way to improve our thinking is to understand that we place way too much faith in our judgments. This is known as the overconfidence barrier. We would be better off if we used analysis in our decisions rather than trusting ourselves to be brilliant all the time. Sometimes you paint yourself into a corner, and now you either have to walk through the wet paint or wait for it to dry. And that is the end of the chapter. I don't really remember what question I asked. I think it has something to do. What does it have to do with? It has to do with automatic thinking, if I remember correctly. Anyway, okay. So next week we'll tackle chapter 4, and well, I'll see you next week.